"You are just not the right fit for our new direction, Michael. We need fresh blood, younger energy. Your services are no longer required." The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. My name is Michael Harrison. I am 52 years old, and until that moment, I had been the senior project manager at Meridian Construction Solutions in Denver, Colorado for 15 years. 15 years of 60-hour weeks, of pulling impossible projects from the brink of disaster, of building the reputation that made Meridian the go-to firm for high-end commercial developments across the Rocky Mountain region. The meeting lasted exactly 12 minutes. I sat there in that glass-walled conference room, my leather portfolio a gift from my late father, when I got my first management position resting on the polished mahogany table. Outside, Denver's skyline gleamed in the afternoon sun, cranes dotting the horizon like mechanical prayers to progress I had helped orchestrate. I did not explode. I did not shout. I simply nodded. "I understand," I said quietly, though inside, my world was crumbling like poorly mixed concrete. The other executives around the table could not meet my gaze. Some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, others stared at their phones with sudden fascination. Only Brad Clemens, the 29-year-old MBA who had been brought in as Director of Strategic Innovations 6 months earlier, maintained eye contact. His smirk was barely concealed behind his overpriced coffee cup. It had all begun 18 months earlier, when Brad joined our team fresh from his consulting firm in California. I would been assigned to mentor him, show him the ropes of construction management. At first, I was impressed by his credentials: Wharton, MBA, previous experience with Tex Montotes, ambitious goals for modernizing our operations. I should have been more careful. For 15 years, I would been the backbone of Meridian's success. I would started as a junior project manager after my divorce, when I was 37 and desperate to rebuild my life for my 2 teenage kids. Back then, the company was struggling with a handful of small residential projects and a reputation for missed deadlines. I changed that. The Riverside Corporate Plaza project was my first major victory, a $12 million mixed-use development that everyone said was impossible to complete on schedule. The architect was difficult, the city permitting office was backlogged, and we had weather delays that should have pushed us into the next fiscal year, but I had a system: relationship-based management, detailed contingency planning, and what I called aggressive collaboration with subcontractors. We finished 2 weeks early and $200,000 under budget. That project led to the Stapleton Medical Center, then the Cherry Creek luxury condominiums, then the contract that made Meridian's reputation, the Denver International Airport Expansion Project. 4 years, $85 million, completed ahead of schedule, despite federal regulatory changes mid-construction. My personal life was simpler but stable. After the divorce, I would focused on my kids Sarah, now 28 and a nurse in Seattle, and Jake, 26, and finishing law school at SUNY Boulder. I lived alone in a modest townhouse in Littleton, drove a reliable Toyota Tacoma, and spent weekends hiking 14ers or working on my woodworking projects in the garage. I was not flashy, but I was effective. My client relationships were built on trust earned through decades of delivering impossible results. When Brad arrived, I took him under my wing, like I had with dozens of junior staff over the years. I introduced him to key clients, walked him through our project management systems, shared the contact lists I would build over 15 years of networking. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The first red flag was subtle. Brad started scheduling strategic meetings with clients without including me. When I asked about it, he would wave me off with corporate speak about streamlining communication channels and opining stakeholder engagement. The second warning came during our monthly review meetings. Brad began presenting my project updates as Klebold efforts, then gradually as initiatives he was overseeing. He never directly took credit, but the language shifted. Michael and I have been working on became. I have been coordinating with Michael on became my team has been handling. The third sign was more personal. Brad started mispronouncing my name in front of clients. Not Michael, but Mike, or sometimes Matt. Small things, but consistent enough that I noticed. When I corrected him, he would laugh it off as a slip of the tongue. But the moment I should have acted was during the Highlands Ranch project. Presentation. I would spend 3 weeks developing a comprehensive project timeline for a $22 million retail complex. The client, Peterson Development Group, had specifically requested me based on our work together on 2 previous projects. Brad presented my entire proposal as his own work. I sat in the back of the conference room watching him use my words, my research, my relationship with the client to position himself as the lead on what would become our biggest contract of the year. When Peterson's CUO asked a technical question about foundation requirements in expansive clay soil, Brad fumbled for 30 seconds before glancing back at me with pleading eyes. I should have let him hang. Instead, I stepped in and answered the question, salvaging the presentation and securing the contract. After the meeting, Brad shook my hand and said, "Great teamwork, Mike. This is what collaboration looks like." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, listening to the late autumn wind rattling the windows. Something's wrong here, asterisk, I thought. This is not about collaboration. This is about replacement, asterisk. But I still did not act. I told myself I was being paranoid, that a young MBA was no threat to 15 years of proven results and established relationships. The critical moment came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reviewing quarterly reports when I received an email from Janet Morrison, our CFO, asking me to attend an urgent meeting in the main conference room. No agenda, no context, just please attend immediately. The sky outside was overcast, threatening the kind of spring snow that makes Denver construction schedules a nightmare. I walked into that conference room carrying my portfolio and expecting to discuss the Memorial Hospital project timeline. We would been fine-tuning for weeks. Instead, I found the entire executive team seated around the table like a tribunal. Brad sat to the right of CUO Harrison Walsh, a leather folder conspicuously placed in front of him. Michael Walsh began, his voice carrying the tone of a man who had rehearsed this conversation. "We need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention." Concerns, asterisk. Brad opened his folder with theatrical precision. "Over the past several months, I have documented a pattern of resistance to modernization efforts, missed communication with key stakeholders, and what appears to be an inability to adapt to our evolving corporate culture." He slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. Performance evaluations I would never seen. Client communication logs that painted my direct, results-focused style as abrasive and old-fashioned. Meeting notes that reframed my 15 years of successful project management as inflexible adherence to outdated methodologies. Furthermore, Brad continued, we have received feedback from clients suggesting they would prefer to work with our newer, more innovative team members going forward. That was a lie. I knew it was a lie because I had just spoken with 3 of our biggest clients the previous week. Peterson Development had specifically asked when I would be available to discuss their next project. Colorado Springs Medical Center had requested me by name for their expansion consultation, but I was outnumbered, and the narrative had already been written. "You are just not the right fit for our new direction, Michael. We need fresh blood, younger energy. Your services are no longer required." After the meeting, I sat in my Toyota in the parking lot for 20 minutes, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed with a text from my son Jake. "How's work going, Dad?" "Still building Denver, one project at a time." I could not bring myself to respond. That evening, I called my brother Dave, a corporate attorney in Phoenix. I needed perspective, and Dave had never been one to sugarcoat reality. "They just threw away 15 years, he asked. After I would explain the situation. "Apparently, Mike, you built that company's reputation. Half their client base probably does not even know who Brad, whatever his name is, and they will soon enough." Dave was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" That was the question, was not it? At 52, starting over was not just a career change, it was a complete life reconstruction. I had Jake's law school tuition to consider, my own retirement, planning, the mortgage on the townhouse. But as I sat in my home office that night, looking at 15 years' worth of project files, client testimonials, and industry awards, something shifted in my mind. If I built Meridian's reputation once, I can build my own asterisk. 3 days later, I met with Patricia Chen, a business attorney, who specialized in construction industry contracts. She was recommended by Dave and had a reputation for thorough, aggressive advocacy. "They terminated you without cause?" she asked, reviewing my employment contract. "They claim it was performance-related, but the documentation is fabricated. I can prove it." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Michael, I need to ask you something directly. Do you want to fight this termination, or do you want to move forward independently?" It was a good question. Fighting would mean months of legal proceedings, depositions, and public disputes that would make it harder to maintain client relationships. Moving forward meant accepting the injustice, but positioning myself for long-term success. "I want to move forward," I said, "but I want to do it in a way that shows them exactly what they have lost." Patricia smiled. "Now that's a conversation I can work with." Over the next 2 weeks, we developed a comprehensive strategy. First, I would leverage my non-compete clause limitations, which only prevented me from working directly for Meridian's current clients for 6 months, but said nothing about new business development. Second, I would establish my own consulting firm, positioning myself as a senior-level construction management specialist for complex commercial projects. Third, and most importantly, I would let my work speak for itself. I incorporated Harrison Project Solutions on a Friday afternoon in April. The name was simple, professional, and carried my father's legacy. The portfolio he would given me had belonged to his father, a union foreman who had helped build half of Chicago's skyline in the 1950s. The first month was challenging. I worked from my home office, reaching out to former colleagues, subcontractors, and industry contacts. I attended every construction industry networking event in the Denver metropolitan area, not to actively solicit business, but to remind people that I was still active and available. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jerry Kowalski, the project superintendent from our Stapleton Medical Center build, called me on a Tuesday evening in May. "Mike, I heard what happened at Meridian. That's some bullshit, if you ask me. It's the industry, Jerry. Things change." "Yeah, well, here is the thing. I am working on a project for Mountain View Regional Hospital. Independent contractor work, not through Meridian. The project manager they hired is, let's just say, he's not you." Jerry explained that Mountain View had hired a small firm to manage a $15 million emergency department expansion. The project was already 6 weeks behind schedule, $400,000 over budget, and the hospital administration was considering terminating their contract. They need someone who knows how to handle hospital construction regulations, someone who can work with medical staff requirements, someone who can fix this mess without starting over. Someone like me. I met with Mountain View's facilities director the following Thursday. The project was indeed a disaster: poor coordination between electrical and medical gas systems, inadequate consideration for infection control requirements during construction, and a timeline that ignored the realities of working in an active medical facility. "But it was fixable, Mr. Harrison," the facilities director said, after I would presented my assessment. "Can you have us operational by the 1st of October? "The 15th of September, I replied, "and I will guarantee that date in writing." We shook hands on a consulting contract that would pay me more in 4 months than I would made in my last year at Meridian. Meanwhile, Brad was learning that managing people is different from managing PowerPoint presentations. The first sign of trouble at Meridian came in late June, when the Peterson Development Group pulled out of the Highlands Ranch project. According to industry rumors, there had been communication issues and concerns about project management capability. The second sign was more public. The Memorial Hospital project, my project, the one I would been developing when they fired me, went to bid 3 weeks late and came in $1.2 million over the original estimate. The hospital chose a different contractor. By August, Meridian had lost 2 major contracts and was facing cost overruns on 3 active projects. In September, I received an unexpected phone call. "Michael, this is Harrison Walsh. I was wondering if we could have a conversation." The CEO of the company that had fired me 4 months earlier wanted to talk. We met at a coffee shop, downtown, neutral territory. Walsh looked tired, older than I remembered. His usual confidence seemed strained. "I will be direct," he said after ordering his coffee. "We are having some challenges with project management continuity. Several clients have specifically asked about your availability. Continuity asterisk. That was one way to put it. I appreciate you reaching out, Harrison, but I am quite busy with my own projects now. Michael, I think there may have been some miscommunication about your departure. Perhaps we could discuss bringing you back in a consulting capacity, maybe even a senior partnership role. I sipped my coffee and looked out the window at downtown Denver. Construction cranes dotted the skyline, many of them working on projects I would develop relationships for, connections I would build over 15 years of patient professional work. Harrison, let me ask you something. Do you remember the Riverside Corporate Plaza project? He nodded. That was my first major success at Meridian. $12 million. Finished early. Under budget. Do you remember what you told me after the ribbon cutting? Walsh shifted uncomfortably. I am not sure I recall the specific conversation. You said, Michael, this is the kind of work that builds careers and companies. Never forget that relationships are everything in this business. I finished my coffee and stood up. You were right about relationships being everything. The difference is, I never forgot that. Your protege Brad never learned it. 2 weeks later, Patricia Chen called with interesting news. Michael, you should know that 3 former Meridian employees have reached out about potential employment opportunities with your firm. It seems word is getting around about your success. She was right. By October, I had contracts with 2 major hospital systems, a municipal government infrastructure project, and a private developer who specifically hired me because of my reputation for completing medical facility construction. More importantly, I had something I would never had at Meridian: complete control over my professional relationships and the ability to build something that reflected my own values and work ethic. The final confirmation of how dramatically things had changed came in December. I was reviewing year-end financials in my expanded office. I would rented a small suite in a downtown Denver building, hired 2 junior project managers, and brought in a full-time administrative coordinator when my phone rang. Mr. Harrison, this is Jennifer Walsh, Harrison Walsh's assistant. Mr. Walsh would like to schedule a meeting to discuss potential partnership opportunities between Meridian Construction and Harrison Project Solutions. Partnership opportunities. 6 months after firing me, they wanted to partner with me. I appreciate Mr. Walsh's interest, I told Jennifer. Please let him know that Harrison Project Solutions is currently at capacity for new partnerships. Perhaps he could submit a formal proposal outlining specifically what Meridian could offer that would benefit our existing client relationships. I never received that proposal. 2 years later, I am sitting in my office overlooking downtown Denver, reviewing contracts for Harrison Project Solutions' biggest year yet. We have completed 12 major projects, established relationships with 4 hospital systems, and built a reputation as the premier boutique construction management firm in Colorado. My son Jake passed the bar exam last month and is considering joining the firm as our legal counsel. Sarah visits from Seattle regularly and jokes that Dad's retirement plan looks more like a startup accelerator. Last week, I heard through industry contacts that Brad Clemens left Meridian Construction. Apparently, he's joined a consulting firm in California, promising to help companies modernize their operational frameworks through strategic innovation initiatives. Some things never change. What Brad did not realize was that I had not built my career on PowerPointy presentations and MBA buzzwords. I would built it on delivering results, one project at a time, one relationship at a time for 15 years. Those relationships did not belong to Meridian Construction. They belonged to me.